Hello.
Hello, hello. How we feeling?
Uh, it feels slightly more exposed with the camera running.
Yeah, it takes a bit to get used to.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I need to modulate what I say a little bit more, and it's almost like a restart. Although,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think I think there's value. I think there is some value in it in being more serious about what we say when we're on
yeah,
camera.
it doesn't
It's
go
it's a
to.
lot easier to to be silly like you're just talking to your mate off camera and in an audio only format. I reckon you can get the best of both worlds by not always looking at the screen that's got you on it
Hmm,
or the other person. If you look down, you look away, you can think and sort of go into those darker, deeper spaces that you get when we did the pure just audio. But there's something about being on camera that makes you go, oh, this is real. Fuck.
yeah,
I need to be careful with what I say. I need to make sure I
yeah.
don't know.
It's like there'd be a little bit more reluctance, I think, to go into some of the stuff we've gone into in the off-camera episodes with the camera running. It'll be a little bit trickier.
I think that's good though.
Hmm.
I think there's something about we should still try and go to those places, but it being on camera is going to make us be more careful
Hmm.
about how we say things. I think back on some of the things I've said already and gone, you know, I just said that off the cusp because I didn't think it mattered. And it's like, this is on the internet, mate. Especially if you want to be, like I want to be a public figure of some form. I should be more serious about the things I say to the world.
Hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, it's just you and I right now and a collection. We've actually got a handful of people at
Yeah.
this point, which is cool.
Surprisingly.
Um, None of them have seen the video ones yet because we're still um, saving episodes for the future or something.
Which segues nicely into what we were discussing that would be worth starting with. So the two
Yeah,
of us have exceedingly different attitudes toward money.
yeah, yeah. I'm trying to modulate mine because it's clearly too far in the wrong direction. Um, and I think you need to modulate yours because of the same reason, but inverse.
It's hard to say how much, but there's definitely something to work out there.
Mm.
Yeah,
So
because
the rundown is Michael saves ridiculously a lot. Like he's very, very financially responsible. All of that big boy pants stuff. And I am the complete inverse. I'm paycheck to paycheck person.
and comfortable with it, much to my shock.
Yeah, yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I guess I've never done any different.
Equally
So
here. Yeah.
yeah, well, I guess yeah. There you go.
Yeah. I feel like
Yeah,
this is the sort of thing that
sh-
gets learnt from parents very much.
yeah. There wasn't a whole lot of input from them on that basis. I
Hmm.
had the you should save, and sort of okay, sure, whatever you say. Uh,
On the other hand, I remember um, seeing mum oh, gathering together the dockets and going through them and entering them all on a spreadsheet
oh, yeah.
to keep track of what
What's
was
funny
going
is I
where.
do that.
Ah,
Is I manage my money through a spreadsheet,
mm,
and I know exactly what I'm going to have at any moment in the future, depending on if I put money here, there, whatever. Um, but that I've always been doing this for like I don't know 2 years, and the plan always gets kicked out another week. It's like, no, this week I really need to do something with my money, and then it's all gone, and I'm like, oh well, I guess I'll save next week. I've been doing that for a very long time, and it's
yes.
not helpful.
It's almost like you're borrowing from your future self to a small degree, or I'm borrowing from my past self who already put it away.
Yeah,
Not
I
quite.
try not to do debt.
Mm,
like I have, and that's bit me quite a few times. So I'm at the point now where I really do try and avoid debt if at all possible. Like recently, I purchased something with one of those Afterpay kind of services. But it's going to be, you know, the payment that I have to pay back on my upcoming payday is the entire rest of the thing collapsed down into that 1 week ahead of time. And it's still only like a fifth of my disposable income for that week. Like it's real small. And then the only other thing that I have any form of debt on is my car. I do my best to avoid stuff like that, but when I have cash, when I have money on my card, I tend to just buy things. Collect everything that I can as soon as I have money. Anything that I think of value.
Whereas I'll agonize over purchases for a week to 6 months before I get them.
I do that too, but I always do it in advance. By the time the paycheck comes around, I've like made the choice. And I don't know, I spend a lot of money, naturally, if I'm spending everything, but I'm pretty savvy with what I get. Like I don't generally buy things that end up being a waste of money later on.
Yeah, so in the day-to-day stuff, we're surprisingly similar.
Yeah, it's just, I guess, I don't know, your threshold for how much. I know you like to have this big stack to. What is it? No.
It's not about
the threshold of when you spend money. You like to have this big thing behind you. I'm assuming
the threshold.
And for me, the threshold was like 0.
Yeah, I don't even count it on a total amount in the bank. Or I don't want to count it on a total amount in the bank sense. I want there to be, like, for any period that you look at, I want there to be more at the end than at the beginning. So I want the savings to always be going up.
More at the end than at the beginning. You mean, okay, right, so continuously adding to it over time, that number doesn't go down.
Yes, yeah. Aside from, like, if I wanted to save up for a large thing that would make that number go down, then I'd put a separate account there and say, here's a short-term savings account, and that I can spend. And I can spend without guilt because I've already set it aside. But the other number is always going up.
That guilt, that's interesting. I'll come back to that. I have a rough idea of your number. I should say things like that. It's a substantial amount of money, relatively. For me, it's certainly a lot more than I have, which is like $1 currently.
Yeah, I did some Googling, and it was, not Googling, but New Zealand statistics, and it was 20th percentile or something. Not in terms of absolute number of dollars, but in terms of blocks of population. Something like that.
20th?
About that error bar, or that bar when you look at single parents.
Oh, calculated, but no, that still seems wrong. Because I'm pretty sure that like the majority of people are living paycheck to paycheck.
That was the impression I had too, and I was surprised to see that. But when you look at total assets, which I guess includes purchased items.
Oh, yeah. So see, that's the difference. It includes, like, I could easily have, I don't know, $15,000 to $20,000 worth of assets in my house, as valuated by insurance, which is where those evaluations will come from. However, if I were to actually sell everything, that wouldn't be the case, probably.
Yeah.
Although there's the car, so yeah, actually, probably.
Yeah. Well, my car cost $3,500. Not an expensive car, and my parents paid half of it at the start, and I've been paying them off. But then the major thing I own is a pile of books, which I got free, or secondhand, most of them. And to replace them would be expensive, but to get them was cheap because it was, oh, this is a nice book in the secondhand store, and there's sort of household items that if you add them all up, it's a good couple of grand or two or three to fit out a new house. But
Yeah, that'll be where those evaluations come from.
hmm,
Is what would it cost to replace these things, like in case of a fire,
hmm,
rather than if you sold everything, what would you get?
yeah,
Which I'm sure that number is like a quarter
yeah,
of that other number.
yeah, and there's the big difference between buying everything new and getting equivalent to what you have now.
Yes, yeah, like when something gets replaced on insurance, you normally just get the newer version of whatever it
Hmm,
is.
yeah,
Which is funny because you'd think insurance companies would want to save every penny they could. But I don't know, I guess there's something about reputable sellers, I guess, so they don't have people following up on, you replaced this thing for me and it sucked.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know. I'm assuming that's the case.
yeah. But I think the big thing, the the starting point when I try and trace it back, it goes back to Mum's parents, my old Paranoma, who lived through the Second World War in Europe. And although, from what I understand, he never actually talked about it, I understand that old Pa saw very harsh times during that.
Mm.
The sort of like you hide food in the walls so that the Germans don't take it and so you don't starve type harsh times. And they moved out to New Zealand with nothing, met over here, and raised five kids. Grew a lot of their own food, massive stockpile of preserved food, um, multiple freezers, a room of preserves type thing. Um, and then mum and dad were both good savers, and the sense, it's an emotional thing. The idea that I need to save for the future, save for retirement almost, that I can't. There's a limited time to get up there. And it feels like there's some logical fallacies in there, but I think that's the emotional logic that I need to save for the future. It's not a rainy day as such, because I tend to weather those without too much reduction. It's saving for the indeterminate future.
It's, I don't know, something about valuing your future self higher than your present.
Yeah, possibly.
I had a question I was going to ask about.
Mm.
I mentioned, knowing your number. Um, how many years did it take you to accrue that? Because if you're saying about, that you just wanted the number to always go up ever so slightly, or
Mm.
at least not go down, I'm assuming that took you a long time. It's not like something that you inherited or
Nope.
got in the span of like 6 months.
Well, I had childhood savings. That's I didn't get pocket
Childhood
money.
savings?
So, well, I had a bank account with my name on it, and I would put stuff away as I got it, like birthday money or something. Um, and
Oh, well, that's definitely where it started.
yeah,
Definitely where
I
it
don't
started.
remember getting much in the way of birthday money, but I can't remember where it came from. Like, I remember having something like a grand or two
Such a good idea.
jobs
If I
to.
could put away all the birthday money I got over the years into an account that
Mm.
matured when I was like 18 or something, oh, that would have been heaps. But I was, being a kid, I was like, yeah, let's go get $100 of lollies. Yeah, see that kind of thing. I was allowed to do that as a kid. I wasn't ever encouraged to save that money. That was such a good idea.
Yeah. Uh, but yeah, and then through uni, I got the student allowance because my parents had retired, and so I
Mm.
got the full allowance from the government because in New Zealand it's parental up. If you're under a certain age, it's parental income tested,
Yeah,
and so there were friends at uni who got very little because their parents earned lots,
yeah,
and yeah,
and it's also dependent on whether or not you have to pay it back as a loan.
although
If you get the allowance,
yeah,
it's free money.
yeah,
Effectively, you don't have to pay it back. Whereas if your parents have say high income, you get a lot less and you owe it back to the government in
you
that scenario.
you can, the one you pay back that you get as part of your student loan, you can get, even if you get the other one, so you can just get more if you want. But I didn't get that one.
Yes,
Yeah.
but the one that you pay back is limited, and they've changed it now, so it is a total. There's a
Ah,
max cap.
yeah, that
I was
makes
looking at
sense.
it recently.
Yeah, and
Yeah, so it's up to
mm,
this amount. If you get the allowance, you can crank it up to this, and with the borrowing one.
there was something like a number of years you could get or a number of weeks worth of student allowance that you were allowed to collect or something like that. But
Yeah,
yeah, I was
yeah, I haven't
saving
looked at
while
that in a while.
receiving that. I was, yeah, saving more than I spent while I was living on that, and the numbers went up, and I ummed and ahed about buying a remote control plane for 6 months, and then went and bought it, and it was like,
See, I can't imagine being able to restrain my will to purchase something for 6 months. Like
hmm,
if it's an actual will, like
yeah,
I don't buy things that I don't want. Like recently, I got a
hmm,
graphics card for my computer because there was a new game coming out and I wanted to run it. And that was my purchase that I used Afterpay services for. I didn't even have enough money for it, and I bought it
hmm, yeah, right,
because I wanted it now.
yeah. It's like when I'm
I didn't want
starting
it six
to,
months from now. I wanted it now.
yeah, when I start to look at photos or look up reviews or descriptions of or videos of something on a near daily basis, I'm thinking, yeah, maybe I should just buy it.
Eh,
Yeah, and that's the situation with the 3D printer. I was doing that, and then that took a couple of weeks, I'd say. A couple of weeks to a month, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah, I think I spent like a day researching it and then I bought it.
yeah. Then my current situation's weird because being a solo parent, I get government assistance, which if I earned enough would be cut off. And there's several categories of the government assistance, and one of them is an accommodation supplement that depends on the rent you pay and how much you have in the bank. And once that reaches a certain threshold, then the assistance gets cut off. So if
I do
I
have some specific details for that, by the way,
mm,
if you were actually wanting to increase your real income
mm,
and still have support from the government to go through your stuff, because we have the other side of that coin
yeah,
where we still get support
mm,
and a fair whack of it, even though I make pretty good money.
yeah, there's an additional argument to be had about that for this political side, government support and spending versus uh, small
Oh yeah, I'm
government
not a
and
big I'm not a big fan of it, but I'm not going to turn it down when
mm,
it's there for me to take, because that's impoverishing my family for very little real reason.
yeah, yeah. It's like there's almost two sides to that. There's the theoretical predictable side, sorry, theoretical side versus the practical side. The yeah,
But
mm,
it's incentives.
yeah,
Yeah, individual protest on that front is not going to do anything.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
sometimes individual action does nothing,
yeah,
and that's one of those.
yeah. And at the
You can
moment,
stand there and go, I'm not going to take the money because it takes it from my fellow citizens. And everyone else is going to go, that's cool. I'll take it.
yeah,
Free money for me, please.
yeah. And there's a logic to me, at least. I don't think this is just justifying it or rationalizing it, but my job is at an engineering startup, which has a non-zero chance of failing, and I'd rather have the government assistance to fall back on if that does go under. I don't think it will. I really don't want it to, because I'm passionate about it, but it's a job, it's not my company, so I can walk away if it does go under.
Mm. Yeah, having that backup is really useful.
Yeah, but there's to get back to the sort of emotional driving force of it.
Mm.
I think there's a few elements of sort of unprocessed stuff in there that hasn't been
You
thought
said
through.
you said guilt. You used the word guilt when you were referencing purchasing things out of money you'd saved.
Yeah, that must have been a Freudian slip type thing because I don't recall saying guilt explicitly. It's like it was stream of
Yeah, you
consciousness thing.
said.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said that you set up a smaller savings account to save up for a thing that you want to buy, so you don't feel guilty
Ah, yeah.
about spending money.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like
And that's interesting. Guilty about spending money. Why would you be guilty about that?
because I need to get the numbers up high enough by the time I retire. So then I've got something there. But then oh, there's a whole lot of confusions about what the state of the world will be like by the time I get to that age, whether retirement will even be a possibility, and whether the currency will collapse in the meantime and things like that. But the idea that I need to save up for retirement is. I remember Dad. Oh, what's the right phrasing? I'm getting the phrasing beating it into me, but definitely not in the literal sense. More in the
Drumming.
drumming. Yes, that's the right way to phrase it. Yeah, that it was when conversations about financial responsibility came up. It was emphasized that it was important to save and that like the pension's not enough. You can't rely on that being there. The government tends to new governments come in and they tend to screw up your plans, which Dad had experienced many times. And so make your own nest egg. Don't rely on someone else
Hmm.
for
It's interesting. I thought about that a lot in my life, but I've always had a severe resistance to the idea of saving up for retirement.
it. Mm.
Um, I've always had says I find that I'm overly sensitive to things that most people aren't, and they're to do with the state of the society that I live in. And one of those ones, besides the tyranny one, which is definitely one of those ones, the other one was sort of the rat race nature. I've
Mm.
always been really, I don't know, find it emotionally painful to think about that. And one of the things about I should save for retirement thing is immediately in my mind, I get the conjured vision of like, oh, right, awesome. Work all of your life so that you can have enough so that one day you don't have to work for 10 years until you die.
Mm.
That always felt like a just work yourself to death for the point of having enough money when you get out the other side. Like, I don't know, the idea of planning for 40 years to have a whole bunch of money then, it's sort of got, there's a feeling of running on a treadmill until you run out of fat and you're nothing but a skeleton, and then sitting down and going, I can rest now because I ran so far.
Yeah, I think now. I think overall I don't have the logical inconsistency I thought I did, but in pockets it hadn't connected until you described it like that with me thinking of these things. That
Okay.
I totally agree with you that the idea of working yourself to your bone all your life so that you can finally retire when you're 65, 70 and have some good times is a terrible idea. But at the same time, that's not what I think of retirement as. I think of it as I don't want to be stuck working till I'm 90 if I live that long. I want to be able, once I get too old to work and things start to slow down too much and medical bills come up and so on, I want to not have to panic about that and not have to scrape and scrounge and choose food or heating. But at the
Oh,
same
that's
time,
interesting.
during.
That's really funny. I just had a
Mhm.
connection in my mind about that too. I have the same desire, but a wee thing popped up in my mind saying the way what you need to do to make sure that that happens isn't to save money, it's to fix everything. That was my wee reaction in my mind was save all you want, it's not going to help you if there's no hospital.
Hmm.
Um, This isn't a talking to you. This is me in my mind talking to me. Oh, that's funny. What are you going to do when you're not working? What do you mean? Like, I'm too old to work. What are you going to do?
Let the dozen hobbies I have expand to fill the vacated space.
Okay, but that's work.
Hobbies aren't work.
What's work?
Dragging yourself into work, into a place of employment every day rather than doing fun things.
Self-employed people don't work. Business owners.
Yeah, it wasn't a good definition because they work very
Okay.
hard. They
My
it's
point.
yeah.
Yeah, my point with that is I think of work as in physics.
Hmm.
Work.
Yeah. Achieving accomplishing something.
Expending effort to gain a result.
Yeah.
If you no longer expend effort to gain a result of money through whatever it is you're doing that's helpful to other people, and they're like, awesome, I have all day, every day to do my hobbies.
Hmm.
You've just found new work. It only doesn't pay you. And you don't have to do it, I suppose.
I guess the conception of work is the thing that you don't really enjoy doing, but hopefully you've found a type that's not too unpleasant that you need to do to pay the bills. And
Right.
then hobby is the thing you put effort into that is enjoyable. And I'm in the very fortunate position at the moment of most of the time my work is as much a hobby as it is a job. Well, my job is as much a hobby as it is work at the moment.
Right. That feels like the ideal scenario, not do shitty thing now so I can not do it later. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to criticize or anything. You've got your situation set up in terms of aligning those things better than I do. Because my current retirement plan is to go to a different profession. Um, that's literally my plan for retirement, is to go and do something that doesn't physically require my body.
Hmm.
Mental work of some kind. Um,
There was an interesting book I read recently. Uh, I joined a small book club, as in a group of friends, one of whom invited me to join. Um, and the first book that was the first book for me to read was one called When Breath Becomes Air, written by a neurosurgeon scientist who died just after becoming qualified of cancer, and he wrote the book while
what?
fighting the cancer, knowing he was dying.
Right.
So the idea of making all the plans for the future and saving up and laying it all out, and then suddenly life comes along with a 1,000-ton brick to say, nope, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a line from Rick and Morty that's cropping up in my head, which I thought was funny.
Mm.
Um, which was planning for failure. That's even dumber than regular planning. And in this context of shit goes wrong, your plans, you want to plan for retirement. So that's 40 years from now. You want to take a dart throw at what your probability chance of predicting what the future looks like 40 years from now. What do you
Yeah.
think your odds are of hitting anywhere near the target?
Oh, yeah.
Like, sure, you can go like these stable foundations, these stable and respectable institutions of our society will definitely be there in 40 years.
Yeah.
You could have made
As
that statement 40 years ago pretty comfortably.
Yeah.
Today, yeah, I don't know, mate. I don't know if we'll have a bank 40 years from now. It's kind of hard to tell. And if we do, I don't know if it's one I want to have anything to do with.
Mm. One
The
con-
the the variance in our future is
mm.
ridiculously high. And what when the entropy of the future becomes higher, the timeline of plans must become shorter to compensate. You can't predict when things are unpredictable. You have to bring it down to a manageable place.
Yeah, and like it's also like if you take the spectrum of predictions other people make, like to go from one end of the spectrum to the other on a politically hot button issue, climate change, all right, and the responses to it, right? If you go off one set of pronouncements, it could be anything from climate apocalypse through to green utopia, and on the other end, it could be economic apocalypse brought about by the attempts to reach the impossible green utopia through to business as usual. And it's like it's a complex system, and in the technical sense that means that it is fundamentally impossible to predict. And it's like, okay, which interpretation of the world in which those events by humans are taking place do we take? Because you need to have a context in which you interpret actions. So you say, oh, this will cause this, will cause this. But if you've got a different world map that you're thinking with, then
Mm-hmm.
it's this will cause this, will cause this. And it goes in the opposite direction. And it's like that variance, it's like, okay, if you take a step, if you don't look at it from a single viewpoint, if you take a step back and look at the breadth of viewpoints that people have, which is the significant thing if you're talking about a society and the path of that society into the future, because it's made up of many people, then the complexity explodes beyond comprehension.
Yeah, because that's going to be the case for every single individual on the planet.
Mm.
Your map of the world and your goals, no, even step back, but your map of the world itself and the interpretations you take on things like this will determine what things are meaningful to you and what things are valuable to pursue, what things aren't, what things are good or evil. These are
Mm.
determined on a person by person basis by their map of the world. I'm not making the argument that all maps are equal and therefore good and evil doesn't exist. Definitely not. But, say, on the environmental front, one person might think it's a saintly act to donate to Greenpeace or whatever else, whatever political party is pushing that idea, and the other person might think that it's pure evil as it's going to crush whatever their vision of the world is. And there'll be 7 billion viewpoints like that. 8, 9, I don't know what we're at.
8. 8
8.
climbing,
Well,
yeah.
yeah,
Depending on how many rounding errors China has.
that's a hell of a lot of variation in maps of the world, and every single one of those people will be acting differently in the world to pursue their own different goals based on those maps in predicting the future. And the outcome, what actually happens in the future, will depend on every single person's actions.
Mm. And it's not just
You
even
know,
the variance in maps that people have, it's the variance in perceptions of other people's maps. Because it's like the people over here
yep,
saying they're
yep,
evil, and the people over here saying
that's
they're
yeah,
evil. It's like, no, you're both shouting past each other, not understanding each other. And
yeah.
ugh,
It becomes part of their own map, the map of other people.
yeah,
And when that's twisted, it gets even more out of hand.
yeah, yeah.
It's very, very difficult to predict anything with any reasonable accuracy, which is why we take those who can do it as like saints, as people to revere. For obvious reasons, it's really valuable if you can bet right and it pays off. That's great, but
Mm.
particularly if you're in some position of power or like seated power, such as a democratic representative.
Mm.
If you can bet right, you can make the lives of everyone really, really good.
Mm.
If you bet wrong,
Yeah.
that's really not so good.
There was a point I saw made about certain people's presumptions that they would be able to predict the movement of the world economy by fancy computer models, and the response to that was they can't, because if they could, they would have all the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just think it through logically. You design a system that is going to predict the market,
Mm.
and therefore you act on that.
Yeah.
What have you just done? You changed the market by acting.
Yeah.
The second you do it, the prediction's going to fail because it wasn't taking into account its own action. It couldn't. And then, say there's like 600 people or 600,000 people who also have their own system attempting to do that thing. And because of the high frequency nature of trading, they're all attempting to do that thing like 50,000 times a second.
Yeah.
You're going to get runaway chains in weird places. You're going to make the market itself completely unpredictable, volatile, and susceptible to collapse through weird trigger trades.
There was a book I was reading relatively recently that had an element of this come into play. Certain people in the story are able to use or consume certain metals to give themselves superpowers, various forms. One of them was the ability to see just a bit into the future and boost your brain enough to process that. Like you see the shadow of an arrow that's a half a second ahead of the actual arrow fly through your chest. You step sideways, catch the arrow. And it's like it makes you effectively unbeatable. And the only way to fight someone with that is to use the same stuff if you're able to, and then you each see the shadows of your opponent's future potentials explode out because you react to their reaction of you reacting to their reaction, and so on. It just explodes out. And a character managed to work out how to beat that by having a quick enough reaction speed and not planning out her attack so that she would react to the opponent's physical reaction. So he saw what she would do, and him expecting it to be a perfect win scenario for him, went to attack, and then suddenly her image split in two because she was reacting to his reaction of her image. And the loop was it was a U rather than a loop, so it didn't explode into multiple, but she reacted to his block to attack the other way, and she won. And it's a similar thing to that, where the explosion of potentials makes it all impossible to predict.
It's a dangerous situation because in your analogy there, and in other shows I've seen as well, the solution to predictive loops like that is being unpredictable, which is not something we want. I'm not saying that's going to work, like putting all your money in the wrong place in the market. It's like, yeah, that sure will work. No. But the point stands is that prediction has a problem. And if it worked, whoever could do it would win all of the games all of the time. And there isn't really anyone who does that. Well, there is, but they're not doing it flawlessly.
It's stop responding to their predictions rather than just act unpredictably. Like, you can act unpredictably, you can base your actions on things that they are not influencing, or you can take yourself out of the game. Like, buying precious metals as an investment is a form of taking yourself out of the game. Like, you have a lump of gold and you've watched the stock market going up and down. It's like, this gold ain't doing anything. I'm not involved in that. This is going to sit in my safe for 50 years, and then I'll pull it out when I need to retire.
Yeah, livestock.
Yeah.
Grain supplies, things like this. Yeah.
Yeah. Although things that do get traded within a certain time frame, the ripples are much slower, but they're still present. Like the supply chain issues around COVID. It takes a certain time for a ship to sail around the world, and then you get a massive pile up, like there is around the Panama Canal at the moment because of a drought. So not as many ships can get over.
All right. And, I was just meaning with the food thing of when you get to a certain stage, it doesn't matter how much gold you have if you need something to eat.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And people will trade ridiculous amounts of gold for rice if things go bad enough.
Yep.
Obviously, you have different problems when you're in that scenario, but that's beside the point. Funny that we went to this from, why do you save so much?
I wonder if part of it comes from being rather peak oil focused during adolescence.
I don't know what that means.
Well, peak oil, the...
Oh, peak oil. Right, sorry. I thought that was one word.
No.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was that teenager where that was my main topic of conversation with anyone.
That teenager. That's funny. I never met a teenager in my life who even knew what that was.
Yeah. I revel in being weird. Possibly
Speaking
too much.
Of that, but... do you want to talk about that? Or do you want to go into other stuff?
My teenage episode of that?
No, the idea.
The idea in general. Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of the arguments around it come down to semantics rather than facts. If you look at... So the basic premise behind it, if you have an oil field of finite area, you put wells down into it, and, here's a well. It goes up, it pumps for a while, and then it's empty. Oh, okay, we'll put another one in. But we want more, so we'll put a whole lot in. And so you add it all up, and one field will have basically a bell-shaped curve. All else being equal, a bell-shaped curve of production. It's like more wells, more wells, more wells, more oil, more oil. Oh, they're getting a bit hard to find at the peak. So it's not that... Well, they'll get a bit hard to find before the peak, actually, because you're putting more effort into each one, but existing wells are still pumping, and you're still drilling more of them. And then it peaks out, and then you put more effort in, and it starts to decline. And conventional oil production, if you exclude shale from the US, conventional oil production follows a perfect curve like that. The world oil production graph has a dip in the 70s because of OPEC throwing a tantrum and the 70s oil crisis and that. And then it picks up again. And generally they're symmetrical, all else being equal. All else is not equal. There's geopolitics and all sorts of issues. It was popular 2000s and teens, and probably early teens, 2008, 2012, when I was a teenager. And there was a lot of shouting about solutions to it, like corn ethanol in the US or algal biofuels or whatever, various things that would save the day and make it not a problem. They're not here, are they, at the moment? So they didn't solve that problem, so to speak. And if you look at oil production of light sweet crude, that's crude oil which flows easily out of the ground as opposed to being like tar, and has a low sulfur content, which makes it easier to refine. High sulfur content makes stuff harder. I'm not sure of the chemistry, but that's what I understand. If you look at light sweet crude, global oil production peaked in 2005. High sulfur content makes it more expensive to refine. Fracking is more difficult and expensive than stick a pipe down and the gas flows out. Like, these are things that raise the price. Saying that we ran out is wrong. It's that we couldn't keep the production of those resources out of the ground up to the same level, and they dropped off a bit. Which is a very different thing to there's none left. We'll still be pumping it in 100 years somewhere.
It's the growth idea.
Yeah. But in a system...
We based our societies on the idea that everything will always grow.
Yes, and if that fails to keep up, then you have, first off, a whole lot of lying about it in tricky language and trying to make it look like it's still going up. Like, most of the shale companies, if not all of them, as I understand it, shale, gas and oil in the US, never turned a profit. They all run on credit. And they're not profitable. They're They're there because we need them to be, we in the collective
Yeah,
sense.
borderline public utilities.
Yeah, yeah. So they get cheap credit to pump as much as they can and never really have to pay it back. And you made a comment about resources that in our one of the pre-show chats that may segue from this.
Oh, I did. Do you mean today? You talking
Oh,
about
and
another day?
no, earlier, um, when we were messaging
Oh,
a couple
yeah.
of days ago. Yeah.
Um,
But to finish the
it
why
was
that
just it was
was.
just the growth. It was the growth thing for me.
Hmm.
That we always had this argument about why societies collapse,
Hmm.
and it sort of boiled down to my perspective was culture and morality, and yours was more resource based.
Hmm. Yeah.
And all I was going to say on that front was the growth idea.
Hmm.
When you base your society on the idea that X resource or X economy will always grow all the time, when it doesn't, you get into really shaky ground.
Hmm.
It's like building up debt, and then suddenly you lose your job.
Yeah.
You framed your situation to I'll always have the job, and then oh shit, I don't.
So it's not so much
Now
that
things are in catastrophe,
it's fundamental. It's not so much that it's fundamental to societies in general, but it has been built into the foundations of the society.
and that's our big danger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm not going to agree with the idea that resources are always the reason why societies fall apart.
Hmm.
I still think, in some sense, I think you're right about that, but I also think that it's a secondary knock-on effect to the morals of the society and therefore the goals, like the map idea that we talked about before, but on a societal
Hmm.
level.
Did
When
you?
the map is wrong, you're going to pursue the things that are meaningful to the society will be pointed in a way that aren't helpful to the society's continued existence. And a lot of those are likely to be we need to continue to acquire resources,
Hmm.
and
Did
hence the resource problem.
Did you read that article I sent you the link to?
No, I came straight home from
Oh
milking
yeah.
cows and sat down and turned on the camera. I've probably still got like shit on my face somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. We're high class individuals here.
Yeah, I did my best. But that, yeah, we can talk about that another time. I think
Yeah.
we've talked
Yeah.
about it plenty.
But
I do have more to say on that, but I don't want to do it today.
yeah. So I felt like that article in question was relevant. The author had written a whole lot about peak oil back in the day, and he, rather than rehashing the same topics and saying this is my talking point, this is my hill to talk about, or stay here, he talks about that one and then moves on to another one, and moves on to another one, and so on. He moves around and looks at things from new perspectives. And this one, he was taking the concept described by Arnold Toneby, a famous historian who wrote about the cycles of civilizations, and he examined something like a dozen or 16 civilizations through history to look at the commonalities of their rise and fall. And he described that they would rise with a creative minority leading, so that creative minority finds the inspiring ideas, and that leads the society forward, and they also solve problems in the sense of society has a problem, the creative minority comes up with solutions to the problem, like homelessness or poverty or something like that. And
This is founding fathers era.
yeah, yeah, and that helps drive the rise of the society. But then the institutions, after a while, the institutions that are created to solve problems realize that, now I'm not sure quite how to phrase this, but I think I'll get the message across. That these institutions rely on the existence of the problems they solve in order to continue existing. So, for example, how much work has actually has gone into solving obesity crises or homeless problems and things like that, how much
The more
funding's
funding you put to it, the often the worse it gets.
yeah, yeah. And so it's the funding doesn't seem to be working. What it's doing is the fight is profitable, but winning is not. It's like if there was suddenly a pill that could make reset everyone's metabolism so that they would have a healthy weight, then a lot of people would go out of business. And the standard approach these days of bullying, belittling, and um, strongly encouraging people who are too overweight to exercise more and diet hasn't worked. Right, it's pretty clear to say that the current strategy has not had the uh, stated
I don't know if
desired
that's
effect.
the current strategy because you're not allowed to do that anymore.
Yeah, maybe going back a couple of years for that one. Yeah, these days it'd be
Yeah,
fat shaming and fat phobic, and
yeah.
despite
Well, it's
diabetes and health issues.
which is the organs of the state fighting for their own existence,
Mm,
and the people in the streets are simply their puppets, their acolytes. The ideas have people idea.
yeah.
All you're seeing there is an institution that has power and feels it threatened, lashing out in violence like a cornered animal.
Mm. That
And,
violence
and
can take a
that
whole lot of
describes it a lot.
forms. Yeah,
Yeah, including verbal abuse. Yeah,
yeah, and so
yeah,
the
and that's what these activist people are. They're
mm,
acolytes to the institutions that were created to solve problems. People in those institutions realized that in order to if they solved them, they would lose their jobs and funding, of which they take a significant cut off the top naturally.
mm,
And it becomes I'm going to look out for me. I'm going to get mine. And also, once you have actual power in the political system, it becomes very 1984 style of I have to support the party. Please smile while we speak about the leader kind of situation.
mm,
Even if everyone at the table doesn't want it to happen, because they're all afraid that one person there does and will get them in trouble, they'll all go along with it.
mm.
Sorry.
Yeah. But the idea of this article was, well, the idea the article was discussing was that the various institutions, whether that is more an institutional structure like the weight loss program system or the healthcare system that keeps, what was the sarcastic way of putting it? A patient cured is a customer lost.
Mm-hmm.
And the author related a story of a friend who'd struggled with asthma for years, semi-debilitating asthma, and came across something saying that wheat allergies can cause it. So, oh, screw it. I want to get rid of this thing. You
That
too?
was me. I
Yeah.
only discovered that recently. Yeah, it is 100% junk and unhealthy food that's caused my asthma for my whole life.
Mm. Yeah.
Hooray! That includes bread.
Yeah. So this woman tried out a wheat-free diet and, oh, my asthma went away. Yay! Go excitedly to tell her doctor at the next checkup and, oh, yes, I was aware of that, but we prefer to medicate for that problem. And it's just like, what?
Said the quiet part out loud there, buddy.
Yeah.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah. And yeah, so that kind of perspective was the backdrop that I was looking at peak oil through as an adolescent, leading to the um, uncertainty of the future and the sense of a need to save so I'd be able to act and do whatever I needed to. So I would have the freedom to act in an uncertain future.
That's funny because I had a similar adolescence, although for different geopolitical reasons.
Mm.
But my reaction was a bit, it's hopeless, and I became a very well, I might as well enjoy life while I have it kind of person.
Oh,
That was my reaction because I discovered the sort of dark government people behind the scenes rabbit hole when I was young in adolescence, and I became all about that.
I discovered the
Um,
permaculture rabbit hole and the idea that I could buy a plot of land to demonstrate and live the change I wanted to see was a strong one. And Dad's comment with that was always that we got to get a job to earn enough to buy your plot of land so then you can do your thing. And so
yeah.
then,
Whereas I didn't have an escape plan
yeah.
because from early teenage years, I viewed effectively all humanity as slaves, including, me and everyone that I know, and that the entire system was structured in such a way to keep us in our positions, which I still kind of believe. And I think my reaction to that was like, well, this place is fucked. I'm gonna just enjoy my time here,
Mm,
however I can before I'm not here anymore. That sounds fun.
yeah.
And perhaps that's where my oh, I have money. What can I buy? What should I go and do? Oh, I'd like something yummy. I've noticed this with food too. I have a very that looks nice. I'll have it now. Attitude to life.
Mm,
We had some snacks like cookies and shit in the shed over carving because it's busy, and every now and then you just need like one nice thing in the day to keep your spirits up, or a bit of sugar to keep you going, because there can be some long days. Like we've had 18-hour days
mm,
um, this spring, and that's just part of farming sometimes. Um, I found that almost every time I went into that room and saw those things, I went, "That looks yummy. I'll have one." Was always the instant reaction. There was never or even when there was the spirit of, I shouldn't for X, Y, Z. Very seldom one. It was always the case of, I'm going to enjoy the nice thing right now that's in front of me.
mm,
And yeah, maybe it comes back to that um, we're all prisoners, I'm stuck mentality of my teenage years, of there isn't any way out and there isn't any way to win and take it back. So all there is my little what prisoner's life and the small enjoyments I can have every now and then. I never realized that, but maybe that's where it comes from.
yeah. Not to be too dark or anything.
Well, it's weird. I don't feel dark. I can feel my heart beating, and I think my hand's shaking a little bit. But I don't. I think I've dissociated
Your
pretty well
turn.
from that. Um, yeah, there's something
Mm,
boiling under the surface, I think, but I'm pretty well dissociated at this point.
yeah.
From that fact, at least, I do my best not to think about it too much, and I'm trying to formulate a vision of how I might do something about fixing, at least attempting to fix some of the things that I've seen for my whole life.
Mm,
Um, as we talked about in the last thing. Actually, speaking of that, unless you have more to say on this, I got something.
no, go
No,
ahead.
okay. Remember we talked about my grandmother
Mm,
for a long time. I don't know. I might have said this a few weeks ago. If I have, I apologise. But we had a conversation recently. I'm sure I said that we argued for most of my adolescence about things like this in particular. She was a lefty for her whole life. Voted Labour. That's the left party in this country. Um, thinks that she's a socialist, but isn't actually, like most socialists. It's just sort of pro supportive government and giving money to the poor and all those kinds of talking points. And we argued lots. She's not a stupid woman. Like we had 8-hour debates sometimes. Very intelligent. Sometimes she would kick me out of the house during those debates. Recently, I got a phone call from her, which was unexpected. She only kicked me out once. Maybe that's the truth. Don't know why I said more than once. And she said to me that I was right for all those years. And I never expected to hear that. And for some reason, that was like one of the most meaningful moments of my life. Yep. We'd been arguing about the way the system's structured and the danger and the control that's placed on us, and my feelings about, ceding more power to those authorities as they are. For a decade. We've been arguing about it for a decade. And, I always looked up to her. She was the smartest person in my life, and she taught me everything that I know about everything, really. And I don't know. There was something about that moment of saying to me, "You were right. You saw it this whole time, and I didn't." Um, I don't know.
You said it yourself. You looked up to her your whole life. You've been.
Yeah, it's a feeling of approval or something. I feel it's not vindicated because I wasn't ever angry at her. I've always loved her. It wasn't that. It was accepted, maybe.
Mm.
I don't know. Might be that one because I have on the other side of my family, I have a horrifically contentious relationship with my other grandmother. Like really bad. And my prime emotion there is one of not being accepted for being me.
Mm.
Alice always accepted me. She did always accept me for being me. And that's the reason why we could argue so much. But she also believed what she believed, and she wasn't going to pull her punches. Um,
Which makes the approval all the more meaningful.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, she was the smartest person in my life for my whole life. And I don't mean to use the word "was" there in any kind of. She might still well be. I just haven't thought about it. Um, I certainly respected her a lot, which is interesting. Actually, now that I say that out loud, I don't know why I did. That's very strange. I have to look into that one because I definitely don't think I respected my mum that much at all. And we always butted heads. And I did with her as well, but I don't know.
Could it be because she respected you enough to be a worthy opponent in a sense?
Yeah, yeah, she never talked down to me.
Mm.
Ever. She always explained things. When it came to intellectual ideas, she wasn't going to be super patient about like, why do I have to do this chore? Not that I did a lot of chores at her house. I remember helping a lot, but I seem to remember that was more voluntary on my part than it was at home, which is also interesting. I don't know. I feel like I always knew her better than my mother. I got to do things with her more. And we shared. hobbies or interests, or she taught me how to do things. I remember cooking with my grandmother. I remember gardening with her. I remember we had little rituals where we would go and get like a certain pizza every now and then, and go to a certain place. Or we would go to nice cafes together. And it would be a thing that we did. And I really don't remember anything like that with my mom. All my memories of her were like being at home. And, well, there's exceptions. I say that. Oh, that's funny. Almost all the exceptions to that with my mum is memories of being at a pub with her and her friends, which is funny.
Mm.
None of this to talk bad about her, if she ever listened or if people get the wrong idea. She's a good woman. Obviously, I have my own issues from my childhood, as everyone does, but I don't think going after the parents is always the right move. And everyone has had a childhood that wasn't perfect and wasn't ideal and suffers psychological issues for that. But if you were to blame parents for that, you'd be blaming every single parent ever, and then no one would ever love or respect their parents. And that's not a way forward.
To say that a job couldn't be done, to say that a job could have been done better is not to say that what was done didn't have great value and might have been
Yes,
done under the most trying of circumstances in some way or other.
everyone psychologically damages their children in one way or another, because what you do shapes them. And the idea that what you do to your kids is always going to shape them for the best in every single scenario is never going to be achieved.
Well, the world...
Just over the 16 years, 18 years, it's never going to happen.
The world psychologically damages you. If a parent is so
existence.
gentle with their child that they never risk any form of what could be classified as psychological damage, then frankly that child is not going to handle the world.
Yeah, it makes them more brittle.
Yeah, it's
because you haven't strengthened them.
Yeah, it's a very fine line to...
Yeah. I just...
Yeah.
You can't put that blame on parents for whatever thing you deal with from your childhood. Because there is no perfect childhood. There is no perfect life. And one thing you can say about most parents, is that they love their kids. There's a part of my brain that says, you sure about most there? I'd say that there was a certain generation that really wasn't such a big fan of their children. And that's played out in society in a pretty dark way and caused majority of the problems that we have. That's interesting. If you love your kids, you sacrifice for them. And if you don't do that and instead accrue everything to yourself and tell your kids to go and do it on their own,
They do.
There's devil's in the details there. You can do that in a way that is good, and you can do that in a way that's really bad, which is like stealing from your children's potential or actual future through various means.
But also, like, they'll call your bluff in a sense of they'll go do it on their own, their way, and that may not be the way you wanted them to do it.
Yeah, I more sort of mean like the gutting of society for your own personal benefit now, and the bill comes due when your kids are the ones who'll be working, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, or the chain
which often comes down to the social programs, which is probably a lot of the reason I like it.
Yeah, or the chain of the everyday wisdom that you don't normally... that's hard to write down, but if you don't learn it somewhere, you'll never know it. Like the basics of how you do with it, how you interact with the other sex. in a way
Yeah,
that works.
that's like the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I'm really worried about where we are with that because I don't know how long the tradition was.
Mm.
How many years was the tradition kept up for? Hundreds, thousands,
Yeah.
tens of thousands? I don't know. But
Yeah.
it's sure as shit been broken.
Yeah.
Some people were taught how to be men by their fathers and how to talk to women, and some daughters were taught how to be women by their mothers and fathers, both ways. But I think that percentage is a hell of a lot less than it needs to be to keep everything
Mm.
functional. Like there'll be a threshold there somewhere. And I don't know if it's really going in the right direction.
Mm.
I think, the what small creative minority is working to turn the curve back the other way, but that's a minority.
And that small creative minority these days, it's like the intellectual dark web. It's not
Mm.
the official leaders. It's
Yeah,
the rejected leaders.
rejected leaders are like that. Oh, I like that. You don't want to be an accepted leader.
Because then you're a follower.
Our Well, yes, one, you play within the games of the rules, which means you validate them. And two, this culture that we are in will end. It can't keep going.
Not just in the
Even if
sense of,
it's fixed,
yeah,
then it'll die, and whatever version of it will replace it, that's better.
but also in the
But
broader
the
sense of
culture,
everything ends eventually. So you need that, it's the renewal. It's
yeah,
the,
but we're clearly in a
oh,
precipice moment. Like
yeah.
it's transition time or die time. Um,
Mm.
you want to be a leader now who's rejected by the current system. That's what you want to be. Because the people who are rejected by the current system but are still clearly leaders are the ones who are going to lead and design and shape the next one. That's the priestly class from the Yuga cycle.
Ooh. Priest or magician? I'm just thinking of a few different archetypes. Like you have the future king meets the crazy magician, the guy who's rejected by the rest of society, and then trains them to come and lead the society as a whole. But the magician who has the knowledge and the wisdom is not the one who leads. He's the one who was rejected.
But he leads from behind the scenes.
Yeah, and so the intellectual dark web current generation, for want of better phrasing, are training the kings of the future in the wider society. The people who take a red pill, take a blue pill, take a white pill, take a black pill, and sort of mix it all together and see through it and so that bit's wrong. I'll keep that bit, da, 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 da. And they filter it through and gain the wisdom from as much as they can.
That's where the instinct I've been having is coming from.
Yeah, and
That
get the luck to get that mix right. But
all of these leaders that we have are the priestly magicians. They're standing up and saying, all of you need to do this, 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 this. But they're not really doing it themselves. They're doing the spreading the message role. And that's not condemning, but your point of they are training the future kings.
one
I've had
person
the
in the
instinct of
wilderness.
someone needs to do it.
Mm,
There's been enough of they'll do it or I
yeah.
won't, I can't. Like
If
like the
no
call to
one's
Moses. I don't
yeah.
want to. I'm not even good at this. I shouldn't. But if the voice calls you, you should.
Yeah.
Not I'll help someone else. These these people are very important, and they will go down in history as the saviors of potentially humanity.
I was going to
But
say
sooner or
whatever's
later,
left.
well, that's humanity. Sooner or later, someone needs to act. And we need to bloody well do it while there's still something left to save.
Mm.
We kick it out another 10 years, 20 years, like you're saying, it will be the savior of what's left. I don't want to be in a world that was saved by someone 10 years too late and we have to live with what's left. I want to salvage what we have because we're at the peak. And I
Yeah.
want to make sure that this isn't the peak. I want it to make sure that we reach the next one
Yeah. And
for the next people to save.
if we started 30 years ago, if we started 50 years ago, things would be so much different in this sense. But
It's shaking.
oh, deep territory here. But
I don't know. I get this when I talk about this topic. My whole being lights up. It's a weird feeling.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about the magician training the king thing again, and the sort of the literal application of that. Like if one person acts the change they want to see in the world, one person, that doesn't do much. That makes one person's worth of difference. If one person goes out and talks to 10 people, and those 10, 5 go and do it, and 5 go and teach it, and then each teacher begets 5 teachers, that grows pretty quickly. Or one person standing in front of an audience of thousands talking about something, and 1% of them go and do it. Once you've built that momentum, then it becomes worth it to do it. But one person doing it on its own isn't going to make that much difference. One person should go and talk. 100 people have talkers and they have doers. And when you've got enough of a nation behind you, then you can get to the top of the nation, and then you can bring the nation with you.
Yes, that's it. I was going to say the one person can't make a lot of a difference thing. I have an issue with that because a singular person can bring down an empire.
With the support of the people of the empire.
No. On their own. And it's happened quite a few times. A person at the right time in the right place who says the right thing will make a wave that changes everything. Now, yes, people
That's
need
still
to
igniting the tinder that's already been laid down.
Yes, but that tinder isn't always laid down by people spreading a word. Like, there wasn't a great many people doing a great many speeches to lay the foundation for the change that happened in the Soviet Union because no one was allowed to speak. But it sure as shit was effectively a single man who lit the spark.
You don't need to be the one who lays the tinder to light it.
No, but the point of you need the nation behind you if you want to carry the civilization with you when you make the change. That might be the distinction. Maybe one man can't steer the ship in the right direction, but one man can bring down a tyranny. But if you have enough people behind you, I think we talked about this last week. If you want to be the leader who changes the society, who steers it in the right direction, by the nature of democracy, the people have to be ready for it. You can't, it's like doing a technology before it's ready.
Yeah.
Or before people are willing to accept it. Like the idea of a device that's always online was unacceptable 15 years ago. Or even 10 years ago. Some of the earlier Xboxes that were released had that as a thing. And there was massive upset about it. You know, it's a silly example, but release a device like that now, no one blinks an eye. People weren't ready for it. Just because it's the future, just because it's the way that things are going to go, and you're a prophecy ahead of time, doesn't mean that just because you say the right thing, people are going to snap it up. If your message is too early, it will be ignored.
Yeah. And it's by definition going to be
right place and right man.
Yeah, and it will be by definition in an unexpected direction. Because if it was the direction people expected, they'd already be going there.
Yeah, what you want to be is the person who stands up and crystallizes the sentiment that's brewing under the surface.
Yeah.
People need to be feeling it and moving in that direction and have a vague idea, and someone needs to stand up and lay it out perfectly, clearly, and in a way that galvanizes everyone. That's when you get change.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it from doing it when no one has the feeling.
In a small scale, I think that's what I'm seeing at work. Like, I've talked about it in past ones, but I'm going to assume that most of the people who see this won't have watched back that far, maybe. But we're trying to make advanced modern steam to displace diesel, which, if you have a whole lot of petrol and diesel flowing in from oil wells, it doesn't make much difference. It doesn't make much sense. But if you're trying to get your fuel from land, then you have a crop, you harvest it, you convert it to oil, then you put it in a diesel engine, versus you have some land, you grow some trees, you cut them down, you put them in your steam engine. And upping the efficiency enough and usability and safety and so on so that it makes sense is what we're doing, and we seem to have achieved that in the numbers. Now we just got to work out all the details. Where's the pipe going? How are we going to design this component to do the thing? All the little bits. But we're getting a lot of interest of the sort of, that's really interesting and could really help us where we want to do this thing or that thing or the other thing. And there are, of course, people who say it's a stupid idea. But I don't see many. Most of the people I talk to, because I'm enthusiastic about it, so I talk to someone about it, wow, that's really cool. It's not, that's a crazy idea. Because it looks in the picture like a traction engine with new styling, basically. But there's a lot of differences internally. And the fact that it takes about the same amount of land without needing a massive supply chain on top of that. Like, you harvest your crop, you send it to the factory or the processing plant that converts it to biodiesel, and then you ship it back, versus you chop down your tree. Like, there's a gap in the technologies that we have available. We can take solid fuel in a big power plant and convert that into electricity. We do that with coal. We can take liquid fuels or gas fuels in mobile vehicles and convert them into power, spinning shaft, electricity, whatever you want. We can collect sunlight in solar panels in a technically complex device and channel that however we want and collect electricity. But there's a gap in the market for simple solid fuel to spinning shaft. Small scale, simple, solid fuel to spinning shaft. And that's the gap that I think we can fill. And like, there's something that is ideally suited to each source of power. And it's like, okay, here's a gap. Even just off that logic, there's going to be things that are perfectly suited to that source of power, like forestry operations that need on-site power. But you've got free wood. Or the guy who's pre-ordered one already, where he's cutting down invasive trees and taking the essential oil out of their needles, because it's a conifer, wilding pines. I'm not sure what the technical name for them is. But he extracts the essential oil and then uses that to fund the harvesting, and he needs steam to do that. So he's got a diesel-fired boiler where he has to pay for someone to come up every 6 months and give it a certifying inspection, where our boiler won't need that because it's smaller and safer for the same amount of steam production. And he's got the wood. It's free. He's throwing it away. Or probably selling it for firewood or something. But like, he's got his fuel right there. And it's like, it's a perfect application for it. And he knows other guys who are doing similar things who he thinks would also be really interested in similar applications to that. And it feels, the interest that I hear we're getting, because I'm not on the sales side of it, it feels like an idea whose time might be here. And I'm hoping. Startup, so things are never certain.
You still need to get some equity in that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's got to be high on the priority list. I know Big Boss Man's going to be resistant to that, but you need to do something.
he's been in the process of working out a sweat equity scheme, a share options scheme for employees. He's definitely
You
on board with
said
that.
that, yeah. You said that for a while. I feel like the technically not being paid right now is definitely the time to actually get that. You want
My
me to keep working?
situation's complicated because it counts as an asset which would impinge on how much money I get from the government and da 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 da.
Well, you could always convert some of your current assets into equity assets.
The
You could
thing
actually
is,
just buy in a little bit.
yeah, some of
Not
my
that it'd make a
percentage net worth into
massive.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, you know, if you believe in it so much, um, I would if I was in your shoes. Um,
yeah, I'm
because I
definitely
know
tempted.
full well that any equity is more valuable than any cash asset,
Yeah,
almost all the time. You know, I'd be putting at least 50% of what you have into it. But
mm,
that comes back to our threshold thing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
of
He's the boss is a primary school friend of mine, and he's reasonably idealistic and has done his homework on how to start and run a business. And
you're just waiting for a first big sale or contract, really,
yeah,
to kick
once
everything off.
we're on the runway still, like you need to get up enough speed, get
Yeah.
things complete enough so you can start selling, and then you've got something coming in at least, and you can build from there. But we're still in the runway of please give us some money so we can keep doing R&D. Can you give us some money so we can keep doing R&D? And yeah,
All right, so he'll be taking investment and taking off. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Make sure you get something out of that. Um, mm. The peak oil thing's interesting. I think I think that's the only way to bridge a divide between the left and right wing on the because it's not climate front,
hmm,
it's energy.
hmm,
If you paint a positive vision, keep coming back to this, like we have no one in our society who can paint a positive vision for anything. You keep calm. I'm getting a bit hyped up on adrenaline talking about this. I need to do something. I have to do something. But I want to get a better microphone before I start recording. I'm going to do directs. Start speaking because it's the only way that I have a possibility of acting currently. A positive vision for energy could be something that's uniting between the left and the right. And it's currently divided because it's not a positive vision, it's a catastrophic vision about the whole climate crap. But if you presented, forget the whole climate thing, it's all bullshit. But peak oil's a thing, and we need energy to power our factories and our homes. And here's our options that we can move forward. That's something that right leaning people will immediately jump upon. Because you go, look, as this gets into the later side of the curve, economy is going to be hit hard because energy is the most important thing. And immediately right wing people are going to go, oh, we need to solve that because economy is the most important thing.
I think there's a
And you
big
need,
psychological barrier to that.
yeah, it's I need to fight those people that are trying to destroy my economy. That's the barrier. Everyone associated with peak oil and oil is bad and petrol is bad are actively attempting to
Hmm,
destroy our current economy.
yeah, there's
That's
that.
it.
I think there's more to it than that. Like the
Oh, I'm
pro-
sure I'm being a bit
progress
reductionist,
being the
but
god of our current society is what I'm thinking of. And
yes, but even right wing people believe that. So not truly, truly right wing in the
hmm,
modern sense.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
but the
they're
idea that
just pro economy people.
yeah, but the idea that like peak oil is the most concentrated form of energy we have found, and the idea that some good pixie hid the
Including nuclear.
I've heard enough conflicting information on nuclear, each sure of its own point, that I'm not certain that it's can
We'll
do the
leave that to
same
the
thing.
side then.
Yeah.
The portable, for sure. Yeah.
Sorry?
For things that can be done portably.
Yes.
Energy density. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Like the steam engine thing I'm working on, it will not replace commuter cars. Right? Commuter cars would be gone if that's what we were relying on. We'd have trains, we'd have some trucks moving around in cities, we'd have farm vehicles, we would not have commuter
They're not
cars.
bikes.
Not bikes, no.
I don't know. Yeah.
We're kind of
That's like a majority important thing on a farm.
we're probably going to
Bikes.
build a steam bike for fun at some point, but we don't really anticipate it going anywhere because it'll be too small to be efficient.
Yeah. Also,
But
what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to boil the?
technical details. We
Yeah.
can probably make it work. But
Okay, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
I'd find that one entertaining at least.
we wouldn't be able to compete with power for size with the petrol engine.
Yeah, and power to weight ratio, so energy density is the most important thing.
Yeah. Power to weight, we can compete with a diesel if we look at the engine, but the fuel's heavier and it needs the water as well. Power to volume, a diesel's going to win.
Yeah.
But because it's a light boiler, it doesn't have much water in it. It's in pipes.
Yeah.
But
you're targeting the cheap and easy to manufacture and to run.
Exactly.
Part of the segment.
As opposed to batteries that come with minerals from who knows which slave labor camp.
Yeah, we have to solve the battery problem. That's massive. But yeah, my whole point is like there's a way to unite people on the energy front, and I think the peak oil is actually the sell to the right wing of hey, we can get behind renewables. We can get behind shifting off of oil because it needs to happen. But there has to be a bunch of caveats, is that the people who are pushing this right now are attacking oil, which is the stupidest thing in the world. If you're going to stand there and say, energy is really important, and we're going to run out of energy, which is how you need to make this pitch, instead of your energy production is bad for the breathing atmosphere, and we're all going to die because of it. That's not going to sell.
I'm not sure if it's devil's advocate or just fair side of the debate, but the climate change situation, the global climate is a complex system. We cannot predict how it will act. What is likely is more instability, at least over the climatic short term, say 100 years. My current take on it is the atmosphere is a heat engine. If you think of a Stirling engine or a petrol engine, you put your foot down and it revs, and then it might find another stable rev range. But it shakes its way around a whole lot. And as the climate system speeds up, as it revs up a bit, it moves the heat more efficiently from the hot bit to the cold bit. So the practical result of that, if we look at the fossil record paleoclimate stuff, the tropics would get bigger. You would have alligators in the Arctic, but the tropics were still about the same temperature. So the heat gets spread better. It's not that the tropics get hot enough to melt lead while the poles get the same amount warmer. We're seeing the poles getting warmer much more rapidly than anywhere else. That's an observed fact now. And the wildlife in the Arctic regions are starting to adapt. Polar bears are moving on land, interbreeding with various bears on land and so on, and the ecosystems are adapting. And while this change is rapid on climatic evolutionary scales, it is not the most rapid that we know of. Like, there has been... Like, the dinosaurs are the prime example, life will survive. That was an instant change. The Younger Dryas looks like a similar one. There are, I think, ice core records of like single year or like 10-year massive climatic shifts, and we're slower than that. Things will get tougher.
On the climate thing, I'm actually pro the planet getting warmer. for a lot of reasons. But putting that aside, what I was trying to get at was, if you want to help the planet because you're super concerned about carbon and therefore petrol, diesel manufacturing, coal, what you need to do is stop talking about the fucking climate to right-wingers because they're never going to listen, ever.
Yes, yes.
What you need to do is you need to take the whole climate stuff and get it out of the conversation and talk purely about energy and economics. And you go to the right-wingers and go, look, it's not an infinite resource. It's likely we're going to run out forever. The prices will go up. Da-da-da-da-da. We're not going to shut down what you're doing. We're not going to start punishing you and overtaxing it. We're not going to go after your industry. But what we should do is invest in newer, better energies.
But at the same time, those new, better energies need to be fully vetted so they're not just, oh, I can get some funding for this and then go bankrupt and walk away rich.
Yeah, no, it needs to actually be competent. As everything, if you're going to do it right, you have to assume some kind of competent governance. Good luck with that. But the point is, if you want to convince people to stop using petrol and get these backup energy solutions up and running before the peak oil curve gets to the point where energy cost is so high that it is very, very difficult for everyone because everyone's starting to get poor, you need to forget about the climate and you need to go straight on functional utilitarian. This is probably going to run out. We don't know when it's happening, but it looks like it's happening sooner rather than later. It's going to get expensive and we're all going to get poor and the economy is going to get real hard. What we need to do is start investing in alternative and new energies that will be even better than petrol and diesel and oil. And in the meantime, do everything that we can to up the petrol and diesel production currently so that we can get through this period. And that last one is the key. All these people who are running around going, we have to get off petrol and oil. We have to get off it because it's going to run, because whatever, are trying to stop the production now, which is the dumbest thing in the world to do. I get they're worried about pollution, yada, yada, yada. The real solution is invest everything we have into coming up with new and better energies and also allow the oil industry to go full ham and get whatever it can to get us over the gap until the new energy takes off and is cheaper and better. And at which point, economy will be economy. The whole thing will switch over. Everyone will realize that, this new nuclear energy that we built or whatever it is, geothermal, doesn't matter, gives more energy and is cheaper. And at that point, follow the money. We're going to stop using petrol really fast.
There's there's a lot of areas of that I have a feeling
emotional
in
resistance. Yeah,
I
can feel your
know.
emotional resistance there. It's like, oh no, more oil. Oh, that's not okay.
Well, one analogy I saw was, here's a bridge with a best guess failure point and a sort of safe working load. And you can drive your trucks on it all day long at the safe working load. If you drive a super heavy truck on at the failure limit, you think it probably won't break. Bits might start falling off. You drive a heavier one on, more bits fall off. So you don't know where the catastrophic failure is. It's bad to push the boundaries. And that analogy for the climate was the one that made the simplest sense for me. To relate that to what I'm seeing in the world, like, I'm not expecting the world to become uninhabitable to humans, right? But what we can see is heat waves and droughts in Europe. We've seen flood flashes in, Saudi Arabia and Libya most recently had some flash floods that were bad for a whole lot of people. And that fits with shifting climatic zones. And I'm not saying that it would be catastrophic for everyone, but if suddenly you can't grow grain in the breadbasket countries where the infrastructure is all set up to do it because the climate's shifted, not all at once. It goes sort of starting in one area and then swaps back and forward a bit and then settles down in the other one. So it's not a sudden change. It's not a linear change either. And that
I see
uncertainty.
What you mean. you don't want to pump the gas on how much we use because it'll accelerate this process
Yeah,
that is unstable.
yeah.
Okay.
If you're driving a
I
car with
can
half the
see
bolts removed, don't floor it.
okay, I can see how that can actually sell okay. The catastrophizing is a problem. You got to take that out of it. Like, look, this has
Yeah.
some effect. But clearly, stopping oil production is not an option.
Not in a
Like,
stop sense, no. And there's
yeah,
lots of people who rely
well,
for their lives on it.
even putting the brakes on it. I don't think that you can say to humanity or anyone at all that what we need to do is put brakes on oil production.
I agree that
I don't
protesting
think that
against what
that's an
we don't
argument.
want is a bad strategy. Saying less of that, less of that, less of that it doesn't work as a
Yeah.
strategy.
My point
Yeah.
is if you want to make this case to the people that don't want to hear it so that they agree with you, you cannot make the statement of you need to slow down or we need to slow you down.
Yeah.
You can't do that. What you need to do is come up with a better alternative. That's it. End of story. If you want energy, renewables, or nuclear or whatever, they have to be better. And you can't punish the other side to get your way.
You need something to move
It's not going to
towards.
work. Yeah, you need a positive vision and it needs to actually be better. Otherwise, you're going to get nowhere. And on the environment front, if you're going to convince the right wingers about being pro-environment, you have to say, number one, clearly we cannot make ourselves poor and desolate in order to achieve these goals. Off the bat, we can't slow down energy production. We can't start being, cutting back on all of this crap. We can't hurt ourselves to do it, and we can't hurt you to do it.
A moralizing
We have to
case
make it work.
can be made for it, but fundamentally there will be some who do and some who don't, and those who don't slow down will just do it all themselves and walk over the ones who slow down, and it doesn't work.
It's all well and good to say that I can give up stuff, therefore you should. And yeah, maybe the people that you're talking to can, but that's not the point. Once you make it a rule, you're going to be taking things out of the hands of people who don't have anything left to give. And people will die.
Yeah. How many children in Africa would you...
Yeah.
How many children's lives and would you price this in? And
that's exactly the case.
Yeah.
Because that's every single cut on oil production. My point about when I said that you need to let oil production go ham, I meant production. I don't mean consumption. I'm not saying we should burn all the fossil fuels right now for fun. So CO2 output isn't going to change massively if we let the oil companies actually extract the oil from everywhere. It'll bring down the price, and yeah, that'll increase the usage a wee bit. But it's also going to massively increase the economy in a whole bunch of ways in which we can then use that to fund new technology. You cannot punish our main source of energy because everything rests on energy. The second you start taxing it, the second you start closing things down or making it difficult to transport, you're hurting all of humanity because everything comes down to energy. Think about what started all of humanity.
Yeah.
Fire.
Yeah.
First energy source, wood.
There are some aspects or some perspectives from which the point is slightly moot, in the sense of the oil declines baked in through past choices, not just in the sense of you need to up production now so that we can have enough, in the sense that there's a certain lead time from exploring to discovering to developing to pumping and delivering to market, and that's 5 to 10 years, I think. And if you look at investment in oil discoveries, there's the bar graph that way around for the camera, there's the bar graph, and then there's a drop off of something like 2/3, and this is measured in over the course of like 5 years. It's $1 trillion that hasn't been invested, I think, 5 or so years. And You can also see like the number of discovered but unpumped barrels, and or the number of barrels of oil discovered each year versus the number pumped, and that peaked in the 70s. So the known reserves in the ground has been dropping, even as more has been discovered. It hasn't been keeping up with how much has been being pumped, and that's a
No.
long-term trend. But in the short term, the lack of investment, even if all the investment was applied now, the timescale to build out the necessary, to do the work looking, to find it, to drill it, to develop the resources and so on, it's gonna drop. There's nothing we can do about that fact at the moment, and the geopolitical and economic implications of that are,
Yeah.
yeah, baked in.
Yeah. But letting it be worse isn't helping.
Yes. Yeah.
Just because it's going to drop doesn't mean you go, oh, well, I'll drop it even faster. Or, oh, well, I won't do anything to try and help. That's, when I say that we need to, like, let them go ham, what I mean is we need to take all the brakes off it.
Mm.
Because if we are on the downslope, the best thing that we can do right now is slowing that decline as much as possible in the short term so we can get investment or keep everything going while we invest in new technology and start building out the plants. If we took all the brakes off, majority of the regulation that's constricting these businesses off, allowed investment into it as investors would do on their own risk and own choices, let the oil industry go ham, because there's a lot of places that are untouched. Like, I'm sure you're right with there's not as much unpumped oil as there used to be, and that trend goes down. If we did that now and simultaneously did a massive government tax investment into, say, building out nuclear power stations everywhere in a new modern design, while also investing in iterating that design so you can update it and yada, 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 by the time that gets to the dangerous point, we could have something to fall back on. Or wind or solar or whatever else.
But the key thing is that in addition to saying we need to have something to keep us going now, we need to be moving towards something for the future and not a pie in the sky, we'll all have fusion in 20 years type thing.
No, it needs to be something. It needs to be something now. It's all
and
well
diverts,
and good to say we can invest. Yeah, it's all well and good to say we need to invest in the next type of nuclear that's even better, and we want to make this pie in the sky project. Or we want to invest in the next iteration of reactor before we start building it. If we're in the situation where we need to do something now, it doesn't matter how not great it is. It needs to be the next best thing up on the chart behind petrol that needs to be invested in. And obviously, when we throw all that money behind it, it's going to get better. My bet is nuclear, that's the way to go.
Yeah. And we need things to work in the less developed areas of the world too. Like that's why I like the steam engines, because in theory, you need to keep it running as an axe.
You're pitching this pretty hard, but I think you're right that a high-tech solution is needed for the Western world, but a low-tech solution is also needed.
Well, I want to have the low-tech solution ready for the West when it needs it too, but yeah. We can sell it to all the third world countries so they can have an easier life in the meantime. I'm all for that.
Yeah, I'm 100% focused on trying to save the peak where we're at before we collapse, not catching us as we fall. I really want to, as we've leveled out, get the change now to keep us going back up rather than let us collapse and then catch. But obviously it comes down to probability and what it's going to go.
And the fundamental is aiming up instead of aiming down. So even if you think it's doing that and you want to reduce the slope versus you think it's doing that and you want to keep it going up more or whatever, it's making things better instead of making things worse. And
well, we have kids and we want things to be better for them. I think we should stop because we've been going for ages and I'm all excited.
Yeah, 1 hour 50.
My family's like, how are you coming back? So I think we should cut it there and say goodnight because we could keep going on this for hours.
Yep.
And we will next week.
Yeah. See you then.
See you, buddy.
Bye.